Ben Hale stepped off the shuttle with a small pack and a tired smile. The air of Elira tasted like rain and stone. Wind crossed the landing field with a low, even sound, as if the planet were breathing. He paused to watch cloud towers in the far distance. They stood like pale trees made of machines and vines. Lightning flickered inside them, gentle and controlled, guiding storms across the dry lands. Some towers were dark. Some leaned a little, as if the wind had pushed them too hard. That was why he had come. He was a field engineer and a medic, the kind that fixed broken things and calmed people when fear made small problems feel large. A runner in slate armor met him at the steps. "Engineer Hale, Captain Rook requests you in the palace at once. The Queen will speak. There was damage from the meteor storm. We need your eyes." Ben nodded and followed. The city rose in clean lines around them. Walkways braided through, terraces. Water fell from channels and turned narrow wheels that hummed. Every piece of stone seemed connected to something living. Even the lamps along the road were not metal bulbs. They were small flowers that gave off a steady light when the sky grew dim. Ben liked it. He liked clever things that did not shout for attention. As they climbed, the runner talked without looking back. Relief beacons failed at the North Ridge. Others near the desert sent wrong weather calls. The Queen plans a broadcast to settle the towers and ask the countryside to wait for repairs. It would be good if a human voice stood near her. People trust tools, but they trust faces more. Ben made a soft sound of agreement. He did not want to stand in front of anyone if a tower needed a new ground line or a cracked panel, but he understood the point. He checked the pack at his shoulder. Inside were ceramic clips, flexible wire made from local vine fiber, a meter with a stubby needle pointer, and a roll of thin copper foil. He carried small things because large problems often yielded to simple fixes. Anxiety, he knew, liked big solutions. Physics liked small ones. The palace gates opened like the petals of a white stone flower. Guards in gray stood just inside. Their helmets were shaped to leave faces clear. They did not look angry or proud. They looked alert, the way a river looks when it slides over pebbles. Captain Rook waited at the end of the hall. He had a square jaw and lines at the corners of his eyes, as if he stared at the horizon a lot, counting clouds. "Engineer," Rook said, "we thank you for coming fast." He gave the small nod of Elyran greeting. Ben returned it. "Protocol," Rook went on, "is simple. You do not approach the throne without permission. You do not touch the Queen. If asked to stand near, stand. If asked to speak, be brief." "Understood," Ben said. Rook studied him for a heartbeat. "You are not easily shaken," he said. "I work with machines that hum," Ben replied. "It teaches a steady breath." Rook almost smiled. "Good. Follow." They moved through a side passage into a tall chamber. Windows lifted high. The floor showed a compass shape made of dark wood and pale tile. The throne was not a chair, carved from stone. It was a living seat, grown like a tree whose roots sank into the floor and whose arms curved up in an open embrace. Vines edged the arms in thin, delicate loops. Queen Arya stood beside it. She was young for a ruler, Ben thought. Not a child, not too far from his own age. Her face held the kind of calm that comes from being watched every day. A living crown rested across her hair and temples. It looked like a ring of small vines, braided with silver threads. The crown moved a little, the way leaves move when there is no wind but the plant is alive. Near the Queen stood Envoy Cade, all smooth lines and a smile that matched his polished boots. He inclined his head to Ben, as if they were old friends. "Engineer Hale, welcome. The Queen is grateful for your help." "We all are." Arya lifted her hand. "You came quickly," she said. Her voice was clear. "Thank you. Our people fear the broken towers. Hope is thinner when the sky does not rain. Today we will speak, and the towers will listen." "I'm glad to serve," Ben said. "I brought tools that match your materials. No imports needed if we can avoid them." Her mouth curved. "Good. Elira likes to solve Elira's problems. We accept aid, but we keep our own hands on the wheel." Rook stepped in. The broadcast chamber is ready. We will begin when the council arrives. He looked at Ben. You may stand at the left. If the Queen asks a technical question, answer in simple words. Ben nodded. He set his pack down near a console and checked the crown's signal reader. A small disc on the console pulsed with the same slow rhythm as the vines around the throne. The needle on his meter lifted and fell in time. He liked the pattern. It had a heartbeat feel. He looked up when a low tone sounded across the room. Doors opened. Council members entered in robes of soft fabric the color of stone and river water. They took seats in a ring. Arya sat upon the living throne. The vine crown stirred as if it woke a little more. Ben felt the tiny hairs on his arms rise the way they do when a storm shifts. He glanced at his meter. The needle trembled. Not much, but enough for a careful eye to notice. The broadcast began. Arya spoke into air that held the gentle echo of the chamber. People of Illyria, she said. The storm hurt our towers, but we are not broken. Our teams are on the ridges. We ask you to hold water and share as you can. We will bring the rain to the right places. Do not fear. As she spoke, the crown's pulse sped up. It was not a smooth climb. It jumped, dipped, and jumped again. Ben watched the needle shiver. He glanced at Rook. The captain's brow drew, tight. Arya took a breath between sentences. Her hand went to the arm of the throne. The vines around the seat tightened a little, then loosened again. The disc on the console flared with a brief, sharp light. Envoy Cade stepped closer. Hands open, smile fixed. Your Majesty, perhaps we pause. A shorter message might be wise if the system strains. Arya shook her head. They need to hear me. I am steady. She looked steady, but the crown did not. It hummed a harsh note only the meters could hear. Ben knew that note. It was the sound of a circuit near its limit. Machines make it. So do people. He spoke low, not to startle anyone. Captain, he said, the crown is overloading. It needs a ground, not more power. Rook's eyes flicked to him. We do not touch the Queen, he said. Ben kept his voice even. I know. I am not asking for that without permission. There is another way. A short contact at the wrist or palm. It is not about control. It is about letting extra charge flow somewhere safe. Think of lightning and a tall rod. The rod does not command the storm. It gives it a path. The captain hesitated. He was a man who weighed risk. He did not fear. For himself. He feared for her. He looked at Arya. She had paused in her speech between phrases again. Her eyes were clear and bright, but her hand had tightened on the vine arm until the small leaves there folded up like hands. Arya looked at chemist engineer, she said. Explain your idea to me in simple words. Ben shifted a step closer, careful and slow so no guard would think he forgot where he was. Your crown speaks to the towers, he said. Sometimes words get loud. When that happens, it helps to hold a steady hand. The hand does not change. The meaning. It only calms the volume. A short touch with your consent and only when you ask could act as that steady hand. We would stop right away if it feels wrong. Rook started to object. Arya lifted 2 fingers and he stopped. She listened to her own breath for a moment, then to the faint tremor in the vines. She nodded once. I consent to a brief touch, she said. Here, at the wrist. She looked right at Ben. Only when I say. Yes, Your Majesty, Ben said. Rook stepped between them anyway. If he harms you, he told Ben softly. There is not a wall thick enough on this world. Ben met his eyes. Understood, he said. It was not a threat to him. It was a promise to her. Arya extended her hand. Ben took off his glove. He did not reach for her skin right away. He set his wire spool down and pulled a small ceramic clip from his pack. One more safety, he said. He clipped it to a copper strip on the console and to a small strip on his own cuff. A path for extra charge to flow to the console ground. I will be the last choice, not the first. Arya watched his careful hands and relaxed a fraction. Proceed. Ben touched her wrist lightly. The crown's hum dipped. The needle on his meter steadied. The vines around the throne loosened as if they exhaled. It was not much. It was enough. Arya's shoulders softened. She took the next lines of her speech in an even tone. The cloud towers on the horizon flickered, then sent a clean pulse upward. Windows along the chamber's west wall brightened, showing the gray line of rain beginning to form beyond the ridges. A hush fell over the council. They were not used to seeing a change so gentle and yet so fast. Cade's smile did not change, but his eyes did. He watched Ben's hand with interest that did not feel like gratitude. Rook's mouth eased, but he stayed close. Ben took his hand away as soon as the needle settled. He stepped back and showed his open palms. Permission ended, he said so every person in the room could hear. Arya nodded once. She finished the broadcast with simple words. Share water. Mend what you can. Wait for the cruise. Trust the sky. A little longer. When the last phrase left her lips, the quiet that followed was full of the regular heartbeat sound of the crown and the soft hiss of distant rain. The relay officers signaled success. The broadcast had reached the towers and the valley towns. The queen stood. The crown rested like a calm river upon her brow. She turned to Ben. Evan stood in the training yard with the sun on his shoulders and the queen's calm eyes on him. When she said, "Show me," the whole court leaned forward at once, as if the sand itself wanted to listen. He took a breath. He spoke in simple words. Your Majesty, metal is strong, but strength needs a path. If force has no path, it piles up in one place and breaks things. If we guide the force, it spreads out and becomes safe. Kyle, the chief artificer, folded his arms. We already guide force, he said. We add ridges, we add thick plates. It is our way. Evan nodded. Ridges are good for big hits, but this problem is not a single big hit. It is a tiny push that repeats again and again at the same note. The armor hears that note and starts to sing with it. Singing metal is a danger. It builds stress in thin lines. He lifted his small ring of chimes. This tool is simple, but it teaches. Queen Mara stepped closer. She did not look angry or soft. She looked interested. What do you need? She asked. Something that is already cracked, Evan said. A scrap piece and permission to touch it in your sight. Cale gestured to an assistant. The assistant, a young woman with steady hands, hurried away and came back with a damaged pauldron from the treasury of rejects. A long, thin crack ran across it like a thread pulled too tight. Cale set it on a low stand. This is from a training accident 3 months ago, he said. We kept it to study failure lines. Evan thanked him. He put the pauldron on the sand and touched it with the tip of his fingers, not to repair it yet, but to feel the weight and the way it rested. He took out a piece of chalk and drew a thin line along the crack. Then he drew short, soft lines that crossed it at angles like little bridges. These marks show where the stress likes to travel, he said. Now I will make it sing. He tapped one chime very softly. The note was gentle, almost like a whisper. The chalk dust along. The crack did a strange thing. It shivered and jumped. People around him made small sounds of surprise, Evan explained. When the chime matches the natural note of the metal shape, the shape sings back. The singing is not always sound for our ears. Sometimes it is motion too small to see. But we can make it visible with dust or a lamp. He moved a small lamp closer so the light hit the chalk. The dust trembled again. Cale tilted his head, and some of the tension left his jaw. You found a node, he said. We find nodes too. We thicken them. Yes, Evan said. That works sometimes. But when the enemy uses a tuned push, a steady note, the thicken patch can also become a better drum. It rings harder and breaks faster. The queen looked at the pauldron and then at the chest plate on her body. You fixed my plate by making it not ring, she said. I fixed it by telling it where to move, Evan said. Metal can flow a little if we let it. If it has a soft path, the energy leaves the danger line and goes into safe areas. Think of a woven basket in water. If a wave hits, the basket bends and then returns. A clay pot, if hit the same way, will crack in one place. The basket spreads the pain. The pot holds it. He opened his case. He laid his tools in neat rows, on the sand. A few courtiers frowned because the sand might dirty the tools, but Evan did not mind. He liked to work close to the ground. The ground told the truth. Rules, Kyle said, finding his voice again. If this is a trial by craft, it needs rules. You may not remove the queen's armor, you may not cut into it. You may use materials from your case only, so we see your method, and you have 1 hour. The queen raised an eyebrow. Make it fair, she said without looking at him, and somehow the words were both a rebuke and a kindness. Kale bowed his head a little. Very well, no time limit, but you must explain each step so we can learn, and you must leave the surface clean. That is fair, Evan said. He did not reach for the queen. He reached for the scrap pauldron instead. He wanted to show the method on something no one would fear to lose. He cut a narrow strip of micro-lattice mesh. He held it up to the light so everyone could see. This is not hard plate, he said. It is a web. It is strong in the way. A web is strong. It moves a little but does not let a tear grow. He warmed the mesh between his palms until it relaxed. The metal in the mesh was not the same as the pauldron. It did not need to be. The job of the mesh was to guide, not to carry load. He cleaned the crack with a soft brush. He spoke as he worked, because the queen had asked him to explain. First, we map the stress, he said, tapping a chime to find the most active line. The chalk dust jumped again. Then we lay our rail along that path, so the stress sees a road and follows. Then we damp the road with a soft thread that drinks the vibration. He set the mesh along the crack, not across it like a bridge, but along it like a rail that hugged the line. He stitched it with a thin thread that did not look like thread at all. It looked like a shimmer of air. This thread heats a little and turns motion into tiny amounts of heat that spread out, he said. It is safe. You will not feel it through the plate. It is like a blanket that turns shaking into warmth. The young assistant from Kyle's team watched his hands with clear interest. May I help? She asked in a careful voice. Only to hold the mesh straight? Evan smiled at her. Yes, thank you. He showed her where to place her fingers so the mesh would not twist. He spoke softly. Don't pull. Just guide. She nodded and did as told, and Evan stitched the last section with smooth, even motions. He sealed the ends with a touch of clear compound that hardened like a gentle frost. Kale came closer. He did not touch. He crouched and looked. You did not make a cap, he said. You made a road. A road that keeps changing, Evan said, because the note keeps changing when the world changes. We do not fight the note with a wall. We lead it into the woods where it gets lost. He looked up at the queen. May I test it? Mara nodded. Test it. Evan carried the pauldron to the emitter. He asked a guard to set the power to a low hum at first. The hum filled the air like a soft drum. The chalk did not tremble this time. He raised the power. The note grew stronger. The crowd held its breath. The chalk stayed still. He lifted the chime and matched the note. The chalk did not jump. The crack line had lost its voice. The queen's eyes warmed just a little. Not a smile, not yet, but something like a light seen through leaves. Kyle's mouth tightened, and then relaxed again, as if he had bitten down on pride and then changed his mind. Evan set the pauldron down and turned to the queen. The same idea can live under your plate, he said. Not on the outside. Inside, where it will not offend the eye or block your movement. The plate will look the same. It will feel the same to your hand. But inside, it will be a little kinder to itself. Kale cleared his throat. If we do this, we must test it with more than a chime and a lamp. We must test with range, with warmth, with cold, with weight, with the training note, and with a note between notes. That is wise, Evan said at once. I want the same. He knew that answering pride with pride never helped. answering pride with cooperation often did. The Queen straightened and looked at the guard captain. "Prepare the range," she said. "Prepare the cold room. Prepare the weights." The guard captain saluted and moved with sharp purpose. Servants hurried to bring stands and tools. Kale's assistants unfolded measuring frames. The young assistant stayed by Evan, holding the extra mesh as if it were a precious ribbon. Evan whispered thanks to her again. She seemed surprised that someone would thank her for something small. She smiled in quick, shy delight, and then made her face plain again. Because the court watched, they began the tests. First, weight. A strap pulled on the pauldron while the emitter hummed. No new motion showed in the chalk. Second, warmth. The pauldron sat in a warm flow of air while the note played. No change. Third, cold. A mist of cold air washed over it. The mesh did not stiffen too much, it stayed a little soft as planned. The chalk stayed quiet. Fourth, the note between notes. Kyle himself adjusted the control, sliding the frequency up and down through a slow sweep. Nothing jumped. The crowd's shoulders began to lower. People breathed out. It was the slow breathing of a room that had been worried for a long time and now felt steady ground. Queen Mara lifted her training blade again. "The last test," she said. "Movement." She set her stance and flowed through a long pattern. The blade was heavy, but her motions were smooth as if Wait and she were old friends. The plate flexed in tiny ways, following her, helping her. When she stopped, she touched the seam that had once worried her with 2 fingers, almost like a greeting. She looked at Evan. "Acceptable," she said. The word carried more weight than a cheer would have. Kale bowed his head a little toward Evan, which in this court meant I still have questions, but I see your point. The young assistant gave Evan a quick, bright look that said, "I want to learn this." Evan did not feel triumph. He felt relief. He knew this was only the first small bridge. Real change took more than 1 good hour in a yard. The Queen set the blade down. "Evan Hale," she said, "teach this to my artificers. Begin with the inner pieces that take the highest stress in the guard's gear. After that, we will speak of gates and walls." "Gates and walls?" Kale asked, careful. Mara looked toward the far towers. "Armor is not the only thing that sings," she said. Evan followed her gaze. The palace gates were masterpieces of the old style. Bright, proud, and Evan stood at gate 7 until the last insert cooled. The frame felt quiet under his palm now, like a calm animal that trusted the hand that touched it. Around him, the city's noise returned in careful steps, shop doors opening, wagon wheels creaking, children calling to each other and then falling still when they remembered the guard nearby. The crowd began to breathe in an easier rhythm. People liked to see a problem turn into a plan. The guard captain, Yara, kept one eye on the street and one on the sensor cart. "The humming stones are still out there," she said. "Scouts found 3 more along the old watch road. We will collect them." Kyle adjusted the dial on the sensor and listened to the thin line on the glass. "Same narrow note," he said. "Simple device, clever tune." Rena held up a bundle of mesh strips. "We have inserts for 2 more gates," she said, eager and steady at once. Evan nodded. "Good. But before we chase every single stone, we should learn why the tune works so well here." He tapped the gate frame lightly with his knuckle and listened with his fingertips. This old design loves straight lines. The tune loves straight lines too. When a song and a shape fall in love, they can do harm if we let them. Kale's mouth tugged into a dry smile. "You make gear sound like a person," he said. "It acts like one," Evan replied. "If you shout at someone, they harden and crack. If you guide them, they bend and stay whole." He looked toward the city's heart, past roofs and towers. "The gate is only the first place we noticed. We should check the rest of the city for places that love the wrong kind of song." Yara snapped 2 orders, and a runner went to fetch extra teams. People moved with a good purpose now. Not frantic, not slow, just right. They set up a simple test rig on the wagon itself. 3 plates of different shapes, one flat, one curved, one with ribs. each mounted on a small arm so it could move. A little. Evan tied his chimes to a hook and slid one plate at a time under a tiny practice emitter borrowed from the training yard. "We will teach the teams to hear trouble," he said, and the words were not a boast, but a promise. Cale, who had taught many apprentices to measure, watched the rig with a craftsman's appreciation. "Simple, clear, repeatable," he said. "My kind of lesson." Rena noted the steps in a neat hand. Tap the chime. Watch the dust line. If it jumps, mark the node. Add a soft path. Test again. Evan pointed at the curved plate. "Most buildings work like this. They can handle a lot that the flat plate cannot. If we teach people to love a little curve and a little give, they will build safer without even knowing the word resonance." Yara leaned in. "Can we teach people by sundown?" "If we keep it simple," Evan said. 3 rules will fit in a pocket. No straight spans without breaks, no tight bolts without a soft washer, no weld without a space to breathe. Cale's eyebrows rose. "You would undo half the proud seams in this city." "Not undo," Evan said softly. "Improve. Hide the softness inside. The eye will still see clean lines. The hand will feel safety." They rolled toward the next gate. As they moved, messengers met them at crossings, each with thin notes from the palace. The notes carried small things that mattered. Authority, to take stock from any storehouse. Permission to cut into non-critical joints, a list of streets to prioritize. The Queen's hand was in each decision, the clean balance of speed and care. At Gate 4 they found older marks along the frame, so faint you could miss them if you did not know what to look for. "Whoever placed the first stones tested here weeks ago," Kyle said, tracing a pale line with his finger. "They have patience." Evan tapped a chime and felt the frame answer. "They had maps, too," he said. "These marks sit right on the main stress path. They did their homework. They added inserts, stitched the soft thread, tucked in 2 of the small dampers from the Queen's box. The sensor line fell. The gate's hum became a harmless murmur that a person could forget as easily as they forget their own heartbeat. Boy at the rope line asked, too loud in his excitement. "Are we safe?" Yara did not give cheap comfort. "Safer than we were this morning," she said, "and safer still by tonight." The boy took that answer as enough. Children often liked truth more than pretty words. They kept moving. At a riverside lock, the sliding doors had started to leave long, thin scratches on their own tracks. Rena frowned, thinking, "The water carries the note along the wood, yes?" Evan's face brightened. "Yes. Good eye." He tied a loop of soft thread around the first guide peg and felt the vibration soften at once. Water sings, but it also calms if you give it a chance. A floating hinge here will turn the song into a sigh. By midday, they had a pattern. The note liked long spans, tight collars, proud corners, and perfect ribs. It ignored soft joints, braided supports, and quiet gaps that let parts speak and then rest. The city seemed to learn with them. At 1, workshop. A baker stood in the door, flour on his arms, watching with a frown of concentration. "If my oven door starts to sing," he asked seriously, "what do I do?" "Roll a thin coil of wet cloth and tuck it in the hinge until we come," Evan said. "It will drink the motion." The baker nodded as if this were a fine recipe. At last, near the heat of mid-afternoon, a patrol runner led a small cart to them with something strange inside. A long tool rack that had cracked in clean steps. Each crack a hand apart, each line, beautiful and dangerous. "We found this in the armor quarter," the runner said. "No one saw who did it." Kyle and Evan examined the breaks. Kyle looked both offended and impressed. "This is the work of a careful mind," he murmured. "Cruel in its patience, each line cut just enough to teach, not enough to show. Who are we facing?" "Someone who studies before they strike," Evan said. He touched the surface and felt the memory of a steady push. "Someone who trusts a tune more than a blade." Rena glanced at him. "Can a tune be a weapon?" Evan thought of all the times he had seen a machine sing itself toward failure in a workshop on Earth. He thought of a bridge that had learned to dance in a wind long ago, of panels that rumbled until they shook their fasteners loose. Yes, he said. If the world helps it. We will teach the world not to help. They sent the broken rack back to the palace with notes and sketches. Then they moved to a wide square where 4 roads met. This place had a statue of the first queen of this line, carved in smooth stone with a tall, proud helm, straight edges, sharp folds. The base under the statue had long, thin marks too, like shadows of ladders climbing toward the feet. People stood in a ring and watched, quiet, waiting to see if anyone would dare touch a symbol that had stood for 100 years. Evan did not touch the statue. He touched the base, the hidden side deep under the square's surface where no one would see. He set 2 small dampers inside the plinth and stitched one length of thread in a circle no larger than a plate. The stone's hum fell away like a sigh that had finally found rest. An old woman at the rope line let out a breath she had held for minutes. "Thank you," she said. "That statue watched my father leave for the border and watched him come home. I can't bear to hear it sing the wrong song. We ask it to stand," Evan said gently. "We do not ask it to break." The afternoon wore on. Teams spread out now with rings of chimes, pouches of soft washers, bags of mesh, and simple lessons they could repeat to anyone who asked. A wheelwright learned to leave a small gap in a spoke collar. A river engineer learned to float a brace on 2 pins instead of 1 long bolt. A house carpenter learned to slip a quiet strip between beam and beam so her ceilings would not tremble if the wrong note came down the street. The city seemed to fill with small kindnesses toward itself. At the edge of the industrial quarter, a bell rang twice, then stopped, then rang again in a different pattern. Yera touched her ear to listen. "New report," she said. 2 patrol suits failed in the hills, not torn, softened. The plates lost their will to hold. Evan felt his stomach tighten. "Bring the suits," he said. "We need to see what the note does to smaller plates on moving bodies." A wagon met them at a crossroads. 2 suits lay in the bed, neatly set side by side as if sleeping. No crack showed on the surface. But when Evan pressed with 2 fingers, the plates gave more than they should have, as if tired. He did not like that feeling. He set a small lamp at an angle and dusted the surface with fine powder. "We look for the song," he said softly. He tapped the chime. The dust made tiny waves in a chevron shape across the breastplate. "This is a different note from the gate," he said, surprised. "Higher, narrower, designed for a smaller target." Kyle's eyes went cold. "They have more than 1 tune," he said. "They change notes for the size of the thing they want to weaken." Rena looked from the suits to the city. "Then nothing is safe unless we teach everything to bend a little," she said. "Exactly," Evan said. "And we begin with people." He pointed to the inner padding of the suit. "We need to float the plate on soft anchors. The plate can still stop a blow, but the note will not live in it." Yera made a face. "Will the suit feel wrong to wear?" "It will feel kinder," Evan said. "Like a good boot instead of a stiff one." They opened one suit and replaced 3 hard collars with soft anchors made from cut lattice and a ring of thread. The change felt like nothing to a hand, but the sensor line on the cart slid down at once. They did the second suit faster. 2 patrol soldiers watched with guarded hope. One flexed his shoulders when they were done. "It rides better," he admitted, surprised. "Like it wants me to move." Night fell like a slow curtain over the valley, and the city answered with light. Lanterns appeared in doorways and on ropes between windows. Work tables stood under awnings. The long bell did not ring alarm. It rang a steady pace, a work song, with no words. Teams moved through the streets with carts and kits, and a simple thought ran through them all like a thread. Bend. Do not break. Evan stood on the main bridge with Kyle, Rena, and Captain Yera. The river talked under their feet. Wagons waited at both ends while the team checked the hangars and the ribs. This bridge had always been proud, straight, stiff, sure. That was the trouble. It loved to sing the wrong song when 2 heavy carts crossed at once. Evan knelt by the first hanger and set his hand on the cold iron. "We do not fight the note with a wall," he said for the 10th time that evening. "We give it a path that leads it out of danger." He looked up at the workers. Some were Kyle's artificers, some were carpenters, some were weavers who had never fixed a bridge, but they understood how tension moved through threads. He held up a small kit. 3 simple parts, he said. A mesh insert that bends one way and holds the other. A ring of soft thread to drink the shake. A washer that looks like any washer but is not. It has a thin pocket of air inside. Rena opened a crate and laid out the parts in rows. She spoke to the team in clear steps that even a tired mind could follow. Mark the node. Fit the mesh along the line. Stitch the thread through the anchors. Seat the washer under the bolt head. Tight, but not too tight. Then test. Kale set the portable emitter on a beam and turned the dial until a low hum brushed the bridge. The iron wanted to answer. Evan tapped his chime and listened for the bad note. The line in his mind matched the line on Kale's small sensor, a simple hill where a straight span begged to sing. They added the first insert. The hill fell a little. They added the second. The hill fell more. Workers watched the sensor as if it were a cooking pot that might boil over. When the line finally settled into a flat walk, a soft sound rose from them. Not a cheer. More like a deep breath they had been holding since noon. Captain Yara nodded once. "Let the carts cross," she said. 2 drivers touched their caps and guided their wagons over the bridge at a careful pace. The boards did not chatter. The ribs did not whisper. The iron did not sing the old wrong song. The river kept its own music. A boy on the near bank whispered, "It sounds like nothing at all." "Exactly," Rena said, smiling. "The best fixes sound like nothing." They moved to the next hangar, then the next. Evan found that his hands remembered the pattern now even when his head grew tired. He taught as he worked. Kyle taught too, in his own way. Strict on clean work, kind on honest mistakes, quick to praise a neat stitch or a washer seated just right. Pride had not left him. It had found a better job. Runners brought notes from the palace. One note said the first of the tiny forests for enemy drones were finished and already placed in a ring around the inner streets. One note said, the baker on West Lane had put wet cloth in his oven hinge and the hinge had stopped humming. The baker had sent fresh bread as thanks. Evan laughed at that line, then put the bread aside until the work reached a pause. Food tasted better when the job in front of you had found its shape. When the bridge settled into its new quiet, Evan and Kale stood on the crown and looked toward the city's heart. Lamps made a map of work. Over there, a team was at a gate. Farther on, a crew climbed a bell tower with small dampers in bags on their backs. Beyond that, shadow figures moved along a wall line where stone sometimes trembled when wind pressed it from the north. The city was learning to be soft in smart places. "Supply," Kyle said in his practical voice. "If we run out of mesh, we will have eager hands and nothing to feed them." Evan had thought of that on the walk from the palace. "We do not need perfect mesh for every job," he said. He pointed at the weavers who had come to watch. "We ask them to braid strong fibers into a flat strip with a stretch in one direction and stiffness in the other. We ask the rope shop to twist cords with a soft core. We ask the potters to fire small rings with a bubble inside. We can make 1,000 small helpers by midnight if we keep each helper simple." Kyle rubbed his chin. "Braided inserts in small joints, metal mesh in big ones, ceramic rings for hot places, cloth rings for hinges." "Good." He called to a runner. "Go to the hall. Tell the quartermaster we will need braids, not just metal. Set the weavers to it. Give them coin now, not later." The runner went. The weavers did not wait for coin. They had heard enough. They set their looms in the open air and began to feed them by lamplight. Children rolled thread. Old men tied knots with careful hands. The street took the look of a fair and a workshop at once. Captain Yara led the team to the main water line where it crossed under a market square. The pipe lay in a stone sleeve. It had a sound that was almost a note when carts rolled above. Evan pressed his palm to it and closed his eyes for a second. The cool, steady flow told him more than a dial could. The sleeve loved straight corners. The pipe loved to shift a little with the temperature. The two wants had argued for years. The enemy's tone could turn that old quiet argument into a break. We cut a relief into the sleeve, he said. We seat the pipe on soft saddles. We tie it down, but we let it breathe. A stone cutter frowned. Let it breathe without leaking? Yes, Evan said. He showed the saddle, a simple cradle with a thin skin of soft material. He set the pipe on it. Like a good shoe on a foot, he said. The strap holds, the pad forgives. The cutter's frown smoothed. He understood shoes. They made 4 saddles and set them in a staggered pattern so the pipe's weight used more than one path. When the cart rolled above again, the pipe sighed like a happy sleeper, rather than a tired one. Rena kept lists. She loved lists. They made big work feel like a set of small steps. Her slate now had 3 columns: places that sing, parts we use, teams trained. She added lines, then passed the slate to a scribe who went to the palace and copied it so every street captain could know where to send hands next. This was not romantic work. It was plain and good. At the palace, Queen Mara stood in the great hall with her sleeves still rolled. She had not sat since noon. She sent for a new kind of worker now, the musicians. They came with lutes and flutes and simple drums, confused at first. Mara smiled at their faces. You have good ears, she said. Tonight we use them. Find the notes that make walls hum. But once you find them, do not play them again. Write them down, give them to the teams. We will avoid those notes. They laughed at that, a queen asking music to help people not sing. But they set to work with good humor and care. They walked the halls, plucking soft strings. They tapped a drum and waited to hear a window answer. They wrote quick lines on paper and carried them to the work tables. Music saved the city once by raising hearts. Tonight it saved the city by telling people which songs to avoid. Evan reached the palace gates again near midnight. He had dirt on his knees and a smear of sealant on the back of one hand where he had pushed hair from his forehead. Kale looked worse. His coat had 3 new cuts from a saw that had slipped in someone else's hands, but his eyes were bright. Rena looked like a lamp with 2 flames, tired and shining at once. They went inside to check the throne hall. It was a long room with high arches and smooth floors, the kind of room that loved to echo. The very shape that made voices carry in ceremony made certain notes strong if pushed with the machine's patience. Evan could hear the answer in the stones when he clapped once. It was faint, but it was there, a low tone that sat between the ribs like a guest who refused to leave. He walked the length of the hall, listening with his feet. He marked 4 arch bases with chalk. Here, he said. We set dampers at these feet. We hang the heavy curtains in a double fold here and here. We fix the chandeliers with soft collars above their hooks so they do not swing in time with a note. Kale's team moved as if they had built this room themselves, which some of them had as apprentices. They knew the hidden paths inside the walls. They hid the dampers in the bases and made them look like part of the carved work. When the job was invisible and strong, Kale's pride found a home. He adjusted a collar with his thumb, turned, and nodded to Evan without words. It was the nod of one craftsman to another when a good idea had become a good thing. Captain Yara tested the floor with a slow march of 4 guards. They walked in a line, then in pairs, then in a V. The hall answered less each time. The sound that came back was not a note. It was only the small, honest noise of boots on stone. Good, Yara said. But if a stronger push comes, we will need more than fixed walls. We will need to carry quiet with us. Evan opened a pouch and took out small discs, each with a hole in the middle. He strung them on a cord and tied the cord in a loop. Portable dampers, he said. Wear them at the waist. When a note comes, the discs shake instead of your armor. We can tune them for the most dangerous bands. Rena passed them out. She knew the sizes by now. Bigger discs for taller guards, smaller for shorter frames, mixed sets for people who would stand near pillars or under balcony arches. She did not guess. She asked each person where they would stand when trouble came, then chose the right set for that place. It was not luck. It was fit. A courtier with a narrow face and a long memory stepped close to the queen. "Your Majesty," he. The stronger pulse arrived like a tide that did not splash. It pressed into the throne hall in one long breath. The glow at the side doorway brightened, and the high windows turned pale from the outside light. The air trembled, then steadied, then trembled again. People felt it in teeth and ribs. Evan watched the floor first. Stone told the truth. The first shiver ran along the old seam he and Kyle had marked an hour before. It reached the damper base and faded into warmth. Good. He looked at the pillars. Their collars flexed and then rested. Good again. He looked at the guards. Their feet moved in the new step, 2 beats, pause, 2 beats, rest, like a quiet language spoken together. The loops at their waists stirred and then lay calm. He turned to the queen. The soft cord of discs under her plate did its small work. The plate flexed where it should. The old dangerous line hid inside a safer path. Queen Mara stood the way. A good beam stands, not stiff, not slack, but true. Captain Yara lifted her hand and sent a few signals with 2 fingers and a slight tilt. Couriers moved in the shadows. A net fell across the north vent like a blanket. A second net waited behind a balcony loose enough to breathe, ready to fall if a small shape tried to dart through the top air. Kale bent over his sensor slate. 3. Thin hills climbed and sank. Climbed and sank. He tuned a damper by a breath, 1 hair looser. The middle hill flattened by a finger's width. He nodded once. Not for show, not for comfort. Only because a number had gone where it should. "They have a carrier tone," Evan said. Quiet enough for the queen, Kale, and Yara to hear him and no one else. "A long note that holds 3 smaller notes like a belt holds knives. If we touch the belt, the knives hang useless." "How?" Yara asked. "By making the room breathe together," Evan said. He pointed at 4 places along the hall where curtains hung in folds. "We set a slow wave from curtain to curtain. We time it with our step. We give the carrier nowhere steady to live." Kale's eyebrows pulled down. He did not doubt. He was doing sums. "The slow wave must be even," he said. "No gaps." Rena was already moving. She ran down the line and set a hand on each curtain rope. "On my hand," she called softly. To the teams at each rope. "Now out, now in, match me." The curtains rose and fell in a smooth cycle, not fast, not slow. Fabric moved air. Air touched stone. Stone passed feeling to the dampers. The hall learned a new breath in 4 pulses that met and parted and met again. The carrier tone slipped. The glow at the doorway thinned. The small drones at the high vents twitched in their nets like moths trapped but not hurt. Kyle's sensor sketched a shape that looked less like hills and more like a flat country after rain. He let out the breath he had been holding without knowing it. "Good," the queen said. Low and even. She did not look away from the doorway. The pulse answered. It rose higher for a few heartbeats, then dropped lower, then split into 2 bands as if the raiders were trying keys on a chest. The hall stayed steady. The guards shifted their step. The curtains kept their slow wave. The discs at wrists and waists shook and then settled. Evan felt the carrier tone search for a place to live and fail. A runner reached Yara with a whisper. "The East Tower reports a second pulse under the streets," he said. "It shakes cellar doors and water buckets." Evan frowned. "Under," he said. "They are hunting through the ground now." Kale's eyes flicked to the floor plan in his head. "The water line," he said. "The big pipe runs below the east side and under 3 squares. It could carry any push." Evan had built soft saddles there with his own hands an hour earlier. He thought of the cool weight of the pipe under his palm, the way it had liked, the new cradle. "We can make the water help us," he said. "Not by ringing, but by breathing. A slow pulse in the main valves will cut the carrier's hold from below." Yara did not ask for more than a sentence. She sent Rena with a guard and a key to the pump room. Rena ran like a weaver late to a fair and happy to be late for the right reason. Evan called after her, "Count 6 slow, then let it fall, then count 6 slow again. Keep the beat with the long bell." Rena raised her hand without turning and was gone. Can the pipe carry such a thing without harm? The Queen asked. Yes, Evan said. Water likes to move. We only ask it to move with us. The glow pressed again. The tone thinned into a hot wire and pulled straight through the doorway, narrow and hard. The loop on Evan's belt buzzed, for a breath. He tuned it with a thumb and felt it go quiet. He knew that note now. He looked at Kyle. Higher set, he said. Kyle had already sent for them. Rena's second, a young man with steady hands and a tired smile, brought a tray of loops with tighter, closer discs. Higher, he said, and the guard line adjusted. The long bell spoke from the tower. Slow and deep, 2 beats and rest. In the pump room, Rena put both hands on a wheel and pulled it to a mark, then held it and counted 6. She let it fall, to the next mark and counted 6 again. The water in the big pipe answered with a round pulse that was not a tone and not a silence. It was a breath. It moved under streets and under stones, a soft tug and a soft release. It found the steps of the hall. It found the dampers. It found the slow wave of curtains and matched them like rowers in one boat. The carrier tone slipped again. The small knives on it could not hang. They turned without grip. In the nets, the drones made a last thin whine and lay quiet. Not broken, just out of tune. A new glow slid along the high wall, not outside now, but inside near the ceiling where the arch met the rib. It rested for a breath and then drifted as if it were sniffing. A crack of light opened on the glow's side and a small lens peered down, calm as a curious eye. A voice came into the hall, not from a throat, but from the air. It was clear and steady and spoke the trade tongue. Ruler of the valley, it said, your walls bend, your gates drink, your bridge breathes, impressive. No one spoke. We tested with small stones, the voice said. You answered with small forests. We tested with a simple drone. You turned it into a toy that sings wrong on purpose. We tested your doors. You taught your doors to sway and not invite us. We see your hands, they are quick. The Queen did not wait for the voice to finish praising itself. She spoke in the same clean tone she had used all day. You sing at people from the dark, she said. We answer by asking our city to stand kindly. If you are done testing, speak plainly. State who you are and what you want. We are travelers, the voice said. We take what we need from places that do not know how to keep it. We prefer to test before we take. It saves time. It saves harm if a place surrenders. We asked for surrender at dawn. We came early to see if you learned fast. You did. I am Vec. I speak for the ship above the rim. Vec, the Queen said. I am Mara. I speak for the people who live here. You stand in the hall instead of hiding in stone, Vec said. That is interesting. I stand where my people can see me, Mara answered. That is simple. Vec did not laugh, but the hum behind his words shifted a finger width up and down, as if a hand had moved on a dial and then fallen still. We could press harder, he said. We can sing hotter. Metal can glow from a song if we wish. Kyle took one step closer to Evan without looking away from the glow. Can we hold a hotter song? He whispered. Yes, Evan said. If we share the strain even wider. If the city helps the palace and the palace helps the street and the street helps the wall and the wall helps the gate. If the water keeps time. If our step stays true. The Queen took a breath and let it out. The loop at her waist shifted and fell still. We prefer not to break your devices, she said to the glow. They teach us, but we will stop them if we must. A second glow joined the first. The tone rose. The hall pressed back with the long breath of water and the slow wave of curtains and the quiet step of 100 feet. The two glows then braided into a stronger band. Evan felt the carrier tone try to climb out of the net he had woven in the room in the city. He felt it scrape a corner and slide back. He turned his loop's dial one more hair and spoke to Kale without moving his mouth much. I will build a bridge, he said. From their tone to our damper network. Not to fight. So tire it. How? Kyle asked, still watching the sensor. Evan reached for the small box he had made in the afternoon. It had 3 wires, a coil and 2 discs in a frame, all mounted on a piece of wood no wider than his palm. He set it on the stone near the dais where the floor already had a damper base. He clipped 1 wire to the base, 1 to a curtain rope, 1 to his own belt loop, then put his hand on the box. By sharing, he said, let the note go where there is room. He tuned the coil with a small screw. The box hummed, not loud, not proud, like a good cat on a warm step. The hum matched the carrier's edge and then slipped ahead of it by a breath, the way a runner paces a friend. The carrier leaned into the pace and wasted itself trying to stay there. Kyle's sensor drew a steady line that did not climb. He did not grin, but his eyes did. You tricked it into doing our work, he said. We asked it to help, Evan answered. He looked at the glow. We can stand like this for hours, he said, louder now so Vec could hear. It will cost you power. It will cost us tea. This time a small dry laugh did touch the hum. Bold, Vec said. Are all humans like you? No, Evan said. Many are better. Some are worse. All can learn. Vec was quiet for 3 breaths. When he spoke again, the trade tongue sounded less like a